Hello again and welcome. Michael Pizzolla here. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the Value Capping Rant. This is the 2020 Kentucky Derby Rant, and I'm calling it that because the title of 14th race at Churchill Downs on September 5th, 2020 was too darn long. This may be a great race. There may be some great colts in the race, maybe even champions. But I can't think of it really as the Kentucky Derby. And all my years in the dozen or so Kentucky Derbies that I attended, with almost 150,000 people there, you know, in May, these very usually lightly raced 3-year-old colts, it's a very different thing when those colts have been running during the all during the year. And the Kentucky Derby is in September. And the Derby is after that other race that they had that they called the Belmont Stakes that wasn't run at 1.5 miles. And it wasn't run after these 3-year-olds ran the Derby and the Preakness. So it's a very strange year, a year with an asterisk, not just in horse racing, but 2020 gets a big asterisk for me. I don't know about you. For those of you who have asked me, gee, Michael, you say this is a value capping rant, and I know I should have taken the clue from value capping rant that you were going to talk about value capping, but who do you like? Just tell me who you like. Okay, look, there are plenty of videos you can go watch. We'll just tell you who you like. Here's a big surprise. I'm going to give you like a 30-second look at the race, and then you can go, and the rest of us will have a chat. Okay? Here's a big surprise. Value Capper puts "'Tis the Law" at the top of the line. Oh, okay. I don't think you need me. You don't need a computer program. You need anything. This is a serious horse. 6 out of 7 wins. Just won the Belmont and the Travers in grand style. There looks like there's a lot of pace pressure in the race. Value Capper has set up the race pressured both on the positional and the positional plus velocity side. It's biased it late. But even doing all of that and giving all the other colts all the benefit of the doubts, guess what? 'Tis the Law's on top. And then the other two morning line favorites, it's going to be a big drop down to them. But Authentic and Honor AP are second and third on the line. So it didn't do any favors. In other words, the horses that we like are also the horses the public should like. Now, and if you want to stay along for the deep dive, there may be a scenario where the pressure is very great, depending upon one of the colts, what that colt does. Or if our friendly jockeys decide they're really going to run faster than they can early and sets up for a deep closer. There's a deep closer that I'm looking at that doesn't have the greatest in the way of final time numbers, but may have a shot at a price certainly to get into the exotics. Okay, so I hope those of you who just came for what do you like, what is value capping like, take a look at the screen. You can tell me, you can tell for yourself. But for the rest of you, let me introduce myself, and then let's take a deep dive into the Kentucky Derby. My name is Michael Pizzolla. I've been teaching and writing about handicapping for many years. I am the author of the best-selling handicapping book, Handicapping Magic, co-author of Pace Makes the Race. I am the developer and creator of the original online racing forum. There wasn't one before we published a full-featured racing forum. It is now known as Post Time Daily 2.0, fully customizable. It's a good piece of work. The software is free, and then you pay for the data. You know how that goes. You can find out about it at www.posttimedaily.com. Fully featured. I am also the creator of the Black Magic family of software, Black Magic 1.0, and its current iteration, ValueCapper, Black Magic 2.0. Whether you're interested in the software or not, it really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that I get to share with you the principles of value capping, which I'm going to give you the 5-bar version in a second. But if you want to understand what value capping really is about, why it's such a radical approach to the game, go over to ValueCapper.com, fill in your first name and email, get the basic training course. It's free. You'll get a video in your email box every couple of days. There are 4 full-length videos. Especially the first 2 will change, I believe, how you think about this great game. I'll show you the framework, how it's different than handicapping, the 5x5 formula, and also give you a peek at the software and the training. But in a nutshell, value capping is to bet horses that you like, that the public shouldn't like, preferably running against flawed favorites. You wait for your price, and then you wait for a felt sense. I say, let the bet make you. But after enough practice, you get a sense of how all of these come together and which of the value potential horses that you're looking at make sense to you. So that's the value capping framework. The part that is most mechanical is betting horses you like that the public shouldn't, because we can pretty much find horses we like, and we can get an idea of a horse coming to a race that may not have had the greatest last race that the public shouldn't. I'm not saying it's totally mechanical, but those are kind of nuts and bolts. Waiting for your price, that can take patience. That can take inner fortitude. And then that sensing of, yeah, this is the right situation, I let the bet make me. Now, a few important points about the video, and then we'll get to work. Number 1, this is not a touting video. I am not a tout. Never have been. I am... If you're just interested in who's going to win the race, take a look at what I did in the first 2 minutes, okay? If I just give horses out, what have I done? I mean, everyone does. And there's no consequence. There'll be a consequence when I go up to the window and I make a bet, all right? Win or lose money. But everyone and his brother and sister have an opinion, but they don't give you a way of thinking about the race. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in the outcome of any one race, because no one can predict a race with absolute certainty. And that's one of the fundamentals of value capping, is that the lack of certainty of the game, the randomness that's inherent in the game. And if you go over to ValueCapper.com and watch the free video course, I spent a lot of time on the first video talking about just that. So these principles of value capping is what I'm trying to demonstrate in this video. Number 2, I'm making this video without scratches or weather changes. I looked at the forecast for Louisville for this weekend. It looks sunny and clear and no rain, but who knows? And the reason I look at that is because when Churchill gets wet, the 1.25 mile races tend to go a little earlier than if it's dry. Thirdly, software, numbers, all of that are tools. No matter how good the tool is, they're not a black box. They're not a push a button, get a winner. And certainly ValueCapper is not that. I'll show you the winners it's had in the past derbies and so forth. But, you know, just a tool is just as good, is only as good rather, as the person using it. Okay, so keep that in mind. Finally, value investment potentials, which is what ValueCapper points to. They're potentials. They are price dependent. Sometimes you don't get a price on a horse you think is maybe a good value bet. If there is no adequate price, there's no bet. Doesn't matter to me anyway how good the horse looks. If I'm not getting a price commensurate with the risk, in other words, to take into account all the randomness and all the things that can happen in racing, that's called getting an overlay. There's no bet. And I want to say one quick word about price versus value. When you do your work, you're not looking just for winners. You're not looking just for the price, but you're looking for the value. A horse that has merit, that maybe is not on the tippy top of the line, and you're not looking just for price, because you could just bet the long shots, but you're looking for a horse that has merit that the public may overlook in a good situation, gets the flawed favorite with a favorable pace scenario and so forth. And those factors can bring about value. But value doesn't just mean price. And so many players I see force bets because they look up at the board, they see a 20-to-1 shot, and then clever fellows, they use their handicapping knowledge to rationalize a bet on that long shot. My approach is, look at the race objectively, and one of the ways to be objective is I use computer software. So I'm not squinting and saying, yeah, but this and that. No. There it is. I see if I have a potential overlay. I look at that overlay to look if it's in what I think is a good spot, and then I wait for my price. And I want to have a good felt sense about the bet. Okay, so enough. Let's now go take a deep dive into the 2020 Kentucky Derby. I will do kind of old school pace position analysis, give you a little insight in how I do that right from the past performances. Then I'll show you what ValueCapper made out of the race. I will tell you what my betting strategy is going to be, which is not a primary bet, but a secondary bet. And I've also got one race on the undercard, the Churchill Downs undercard, that you might find interesting. And it's a special bonus for those of you who've stuck around to watch this video. So if you're ready, come and look over my shoulder and we'll take a deep dive into the 2020 Kentucky Derby. Okay, so let's look at the 2020 Kentucky Derby in depth. And I want to show you a few past derbies with ValueCapper. In 2014, to no one's surprise, California Chrome was right on top, went off as the favorite, won pretty easily, only paid 5-2. In the 2015 American Pharaoh, where we had numbers tied with, actually with Upstart, a big long shot, who didn't run very well at all, but American Pharaoh, you know, went on to the Triple Crown, 3-1 favorite. Never saw that price on that colt again. In 2016, had Nyquist Exaggerator 1-2. Again, this is with doing nothing right out of the box. Again, Nyquist only paid $6.60. The exacta wasn't so great because Exaggerator was bet as well. Always Dreaming was tied for the top at a very, very weak line in 2017 and paid $11 and change. Again, these are the Kentucky Derby should be a very difficult race to handicap. The public has just gotten very good. Justify, our numbers agreed with the public, and Justify went on to win the Triple Crown as well, won for fun at about almost 3-1. So it's done a good job with the Kentucky Derby overall. Now, has there been value in all of those races? A couple I thought they were pretty decent opportunities to bet price horses. But in most of them, the obvious horse looked good, as in this year's Derby. Now, 2019 was a bit of a mess for ValueCapper. Maximum Security, who had just won a prep race before, didn't have numbers right out of the box. If you made some adjustments, set the race up as early, you know, comes right up there. And when the track came up sloppy, you would look to the early side and yada yada. So there's a lot of things in that. As it turned out, of course, it was DQ'd. Country House paid $132, and you remember that story. But all in all, ValueCapper does a pretty good job. What I want to do, though, is take apart the pace of this year's Derby. And generally, I just rely on ValueCapper to do that. But let me show you something you can do if you're just working with past performances. First of all, I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I'm making this on the Wednesday before the Derby, so you'll have time to watch the video and so forth. And it looks like it's going to be a pretty clear weekend. May rain a little bit on Thursday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday look clear. So I'm analyzing the race as if it's going to be sunny and clear. Now, one of the things I like to do is to look at the track profiles. And that means you take all the results charts, you break them down by distance and track and surface, and you look at from where the winners come, and you get an idea of how far back the winners have been, how they expend their energy. Those are those little numbers with the percentages there. And you'll notice how consistent the 2012, 14, 15, and 16 Kentucky Derbies have been. 51.7, 51.9, 51.88, 51.72. And going up from the bottom, I'll have another California Chrome, American Pharaoh, and Nyquist. Now, if you notice, except for I'll have another, they were all pretty close to the pace, a couple of lengths off. They all had that energy percentage, and interestingly, with the exception of American Pharaoh, they were all pretty far on the outside. The 19 posts for I'll have another, 15 for American Pharaoh, 13 for Nyquist. I say this because the top 4 colts in ValueCapper for this year Derby are the 15, 16, 17, and 18, the 4 outside post positions. Now you can also look, and again, it probably is not going to be relevant for this year's Derby, but in the slop, you can expend your energy a little earlier. Having said that, Orb won in 2013 from 14 lengths off the pace at the second call, 18 lengths, almost 19 lengths at the first call. Maximum Security virtually wired the field last out. I think he actually did. Was that little incident in the stretch. And then what they call wet fast, again, very close on the lead when Always Dreaming won in 2017. So that's the kind of horse we're looking for. And 6 of the last 8 Derby winners, and I'm including Maximum Security in this, were 2 lengths or less behind at the second call. 6 of the last 8 Derby winners were favorites. And a wet track has allowed, if it comes up wet, an earlier percentage runner. And that, in other words, an earlier energy expenditure, what we would call an early speed horse. Okay, I don't like that term. I use a more precise term of percentage energy expenditure. But it's allowed an earlier colt runner to win at Churchill. Interestingly, colts with outside post positions won 5 of the last 8 derbies. And again, this is germane because the quote-unquote obvious horses, the morning line favorites, are all on the outside. So in 2012, I'll have another one from the 19, 2013 Orb from the 15, 2015 American Pharaoh from the 15, 2013 Nyquist from the 13, and 2019. And for this purpose, I'm counting the official winner, Country House, broke from the 20 and was put up by DQ. Let's do a deeper dive into the past performances now. And generally, as I said, I will rely on my computer software to do this. It's tedious. I'm not going to take you all through it. It'll take an hour just to break it down. But I have to tell you, it was a bit easier to analyze the pace scenario in this race because these colts have had more races coming to the Derby than the normal Derby. And in fact, one of them, big surprise, 'tis the law, has already had a race at 1.25 miles when he just, ran that tremendous race in the Travers. But from the past performances, and you can see this yourself, 5 colts have been on the lead at the first and second calls. And again, I'm favoring 2-turn routes at the second calls. And those are Authentic, Storm the Court, New York Traffic, Honor AP, and 1,000 Words. Now, it's a big field, but still almost a third of the field has shown an ability to be on the lead. And most of those races, the colts have done well. The fastest of that bunch are Authentic, Storm the Court, and New York Traffic at about 46-4, 111-3. Again, there are faster and slower races, but these are what, by my eye, looked typical and looked like they weren't out of line from the other paces against which these colts have run. There are a slew of pressers in the race. 8 out of the 18 colts have or can press. Okay, that's almost half the field. Now, I'm not going to go through them all. You can look for yourself. But the fastest paces that these pressers pressed belongs, not surprisingly, to the 17 Tis the Law and the 18 Authentic, who have pressed 46 and 4 to 111 or 111 and 1 at the 6 furlong mark. So by just looking at the past performances, the horses on the lead may need to go faster than the paces on which they set the lead in their other races. And that means the pressers may push them to go around 46 and 3, 111. Somewhere in there is where I think, unless they really scrape the track and do all kinds of funny stuff to it, I think that's what about the pace should be. Now, this agrees with ValueCapper and its acupressure scenario, which is a mechanized, computerized way of doing what I do by eye, except it uses much more sophisticated numbers and it analyzes every race and every horse's past performance, in which case it still puts it up as highly pressured. I'll get to money moves in a little bit. It shows that as that colt as perhaps having a big lead at the first call. Now, again, that's based on one race from Gulfstream. But if you look at the second call, we see Honor AP, maybe Money Moves, Authentic, New York Traffic, all in a gaggle there. And then we see a bunch of closers. Honor AP, Attachment Rate, Soli Volante, Mr. Big News, and South Bend. Some of these closers aren't so fast. So they'll be closing, but they'll, maybe close from 17th to 12th. Okay? So colts, though, that have closed against the pace that I'm looking for, around 46 and 3, 111-ish, are the 16 Honor AP and the 12 Sole Volante. Now, Honor AP, I believe, is going to be the second favorite. Sole Volante will be a long price. So Honor AP closed against the 46 and 4, 111 flat, a little slower in the first call, but right there when it won the Santa Anita Derby. Sole Volante closed against 46 and 3, 111 and 4. That's a little slower than what I think the pace will be in the Derby, when it won the SF Davis at Tampa Bay, and also closed against a much faster pace. 45 and 1, 109 and 2, winning an allowance, I think second back if I recall, at Gulfstream. A modest race, but what I'm indicating is that this colt has the ability to close against faster and slower paces. Other colts that close against paces close to 46 and 3, 111, the 8 South Bend and the 13 Attachment Rate. I would only look at these if the speed completely collapses in the race. And by the way, one colt won going away at exactly 46 and 3, 111 flat. This was in the Holy Bull, and this was the 17, Tis the Law. Okay, Tis the Law also won the Belmont Stakes, and those quotation marks are in are on purpose. If I were on camera, you would see me making air quotes with my fingers. But the pace of that race, 46 and 1, 110. Yikes. Now, again, I know it was only a mile and an eighth. That's why the quotes are around the Belmont Stakes. Okay? So it looks like this colt can handle just about any pace, certainly any pace that's been thrown against him so far. And again, I like when ValueCapper confirms my by eye projection, in that it sets the race up both positionally, see the big blue arrow, pressured, and then on the position plus velocity, highly pressured. The big red arrow means it biased the race late. And by that it means it paid a little more attention to the late fractions. Now, again, as I said at the very top of this video, the top 3 projected horses with good numbers are the top 3 morning line favorites. And the big, 800-pound gorilla in the room, Tiz the Law, is right on top. Big surprise. But again, a gaggle of horses at the second call. Now, here's the thing. After all the analysis and number crunching, after all of that, the 3 morning line favorites. If you remember when we spoke briefly about value capping, not the program, but the approach, horses you like that the public shouldn't. Okay, maybe you say they shouldn't like Honor AP, according to, some very standard handicapping procedures, but the morning line maker made Honor AP the second favorite. I think he's right about that. When you agree with the public, it doesn't matter how pretty your numbers are, unless you're getting a massive price on another horse and you have very good reasons to bet it. I believe my approach is that there's so much randomness in the game that it's just not worth taking the risk. So again, let's say Tiz the Law goes off at even money, and you may think, boy, that's a tremendous overlay, because, maybe you think he's odds on in your head. And you say, even money is a tremendous overlay. Maybe, but taking that in an 18-horse colt field, it's too much risk for the randomness that can happen in this game. So while it's an interesting race, and while I find the pace dynamic, fascinating, it looks like the public is going to land on the same colts as ValueCapper. And you don't need me or a computer programmer or anything else to tell you Tiz the Law is the top colt in the race and should be the prohibitive favorite. He's not. Oh, here's a big reason why. In a sentence I never thought I would utter in my life. This colt comes into the Derby off big wins in the Belmont and the Travers. Comes into the Derby after big wins in the Belmont and the Travers? What universe is this? Oh, gosh. This is such a strange year in so many ways. The question becomes, can we find value somewhere else? And for a prime bet, I don't think so. Tiz the Law is not a colt I want to bet on, certainly not at odds on, and it's not a horse I seriously want to bet against because it looks pretty strong. Now, if I want to throw stones, let's look. Tiz the Law is 6 for 7. As I said, Holy Bull, Florida Derby, Belmont, Travers, impressive wins. The only loss that it's had was in the slop at Churchill. There'll be some commentator, oh, he lost his only start at Churchill. Yeah, it was in the slop against a pace of, 50, 114 and 4. Good gosh. And still only lost by 3/4 of a length. It's come off the pace. In other words, it's wired the field in the Travers. It's come from 3rd, 2nd, 4th, perfect position, but yet up close as far as lengths behind. Look at the percentage early, starting with the 51.98 in his maiden win, 51.16 in the Holy Bull, 51.30. I mean, this is a classic champion distribution. So virtually perfect. Hard to bet against that kind of horse. And when all the number crunching, giving all the other colts all the benefit of the doubt, still puts this colt on top. Oh boy, at some point you just have to say, I think they got it right here. And we look at Authentic, second on the line, 4 for 5 lifetime. Tends to win routes when on the lead. I'm not sure this colt is going to be on the lead. Certainly it should not have an early, a clear lead, a loose lead. And even when it did get a bit loose in the Haskell, it struggled a bit to hold on. But not much wrong with that colt. Now, Honor AP at least has shown some closes. They made a very nice close in the Santa Anita Derby, where It went against a pace similar to what I think will be the Derby pace in the Santa Anita Derby, 46 and 4, 111. Beautiful percentage earlies, 51.27 in that Santa Anita Derby, 51.8 when it finished second in the San Felipe. Again, it's a decent fit. It's the second morning line favorite, and I believe this horse is going to be the second. Colt is going to be the second favorite in the race. Now, here's the mystery, and here's why. Money moves. If you remember, I showed you Acupressure had this colt with a big lead at the first call. Now, that projection is off those very fast fractions in that allowance race at Gulfstream back in March, 45 and 3, 110. Boy, oh boy. I'm not sure about that number, because the only other route that this colt has had was in an allowance at Saratoga last out, where the pace was much slower, 48.3, 112.01. So I simply don't know what this colt can do, if it's capable of running back to those fast fractions at Gulfstream. And again, Acupressure already made the adjustments for track to track and all of that. So if it runs to that, yes, it potentially can, but I don't know. And this is more typical of if the Kentucky Derby were run in May this year, more of the colts will look like this, lightly raced. So, but if this colt, if, Todd Pletcher gives, Mr. Castellano the instructions to just go out, try to wire the field, set it up, and sets up a crazy pace, as, that's one scenario that could come out of this. If that faster pace and a big speed duel develops, I would look, again, not as a primary bet, because, again, I think the public has got this right, will bet it properly with those top three horses, Tis the Law, Authentic, and Honor AP. But I would look a bit for the closers, and among the closers, Sole Volante, the Flying Sun, has got those two nice closes in the SF Davis and at that allowance race. And again, we see very fast fractions from Gulfstream, 45 and 1, 109 and 1. But against a similar pace to what I think the Derby may go, 46 and 3, 111 and 4 in the SF Davis, grade 3 race. I mean, it's not a grade 1 race, obviously. It had a bit of trouble in the Belmont. I think the public will be very much off-put by the 15-length loss to Tis the Law. And also, it's very strange. The colt went 2-2 in its first two lifetime starts, won very impressively in its maiden win at 7.5 furlongs, also at a mile on the turf, and then has been running on the dirt. And what is unusual is that the workouts coming up to the Derby have all been on the turf. So I'm not sure what's going on with this. But I do see it's got a very late energy expenditure. I would give this horse a shot if that very, very fast speed pressure builds up. This horse would have a shot to be first or second. In a more moderate, if it goes at the projected pace, 46 and change, 111, I think this colt may have a chance to get into the money. Again, it would be a secondary bet for me. I may use it with some of the other long-priced closers, but again, not as a primary bet. A secondary, a recreational bet. Just to bet the Derby. Not forcing a bet, it's just, okay, I allow myself that. Just like when you're on your diet, you may have a cheat meal once a week. I want to emphasize something I always do in these rants on big days, that on these big days, good value opportunities often appear in the undercards. Okay, now, it's Wednesday. I don't have all of the files for all of the tracks that are running on Saturday, so I'm just going to focus on the undercard at Churchill. And the reason I say that, there's a lot of quote-unquote amateur money out there that are just, that make terrible favorites. And in the 9th race at Churchill on Derby Day, September 5th, The Pat Day Mile. Pat Day Mile, I seem to remember that it kind of goes late sometimes. This is a more typical, race. There are 9 horses in the race. The line, if you can see that going from 9 to 2, 5 to 1, 6 to 1, 7 to 1, 7 to 1, 8 to 1, stair steps, smooth. There's no big gaps. There's no big, huge horse in the race. One thing is that the positional scenario looks like the 6 may have it all its own way. But when you factor velocity in as well, the pressure may develop in this race. And that's the scenario on which I'm going to bet. I noticed that the 8 Sonneman, 7 to 1 on the ValueCapper line, both the contention line and the morning line tend to indicate that this horse should be a price. Now, those of you who are playing along at home and have ValueCapper Black Magic may notice that the 3 horse is on top if you open it right out of the box. I excluded a 5.5 furlong turf race for the horse. But if you look at, and I'll show you that in a bit, but if you look at the pressure between the 7 and the 2, and the 7 really needs the lead to win, and then it's joined by its pals, the 6 and the 1, that looks like a lot of pressure. And there are 2 closers that are in the top cluster of horses, the 3 Shasha Shake Me Up and the 8 Sonneman. And I'm looking at Sonneman. It's 1 for 1 at a mile. It's the only mile that it ran. Okay, it was its maiden win, but it came from 8th, 4 lengths back to win. If you notice the 7 furlong races that are sandwiching that race, huge closes, 1 for 2nd and 1 a very nice win in an allowance race. Made a nice close in the Jerkins at Saratoga in his last race out. I think this horse is going to be a very big price because of the last 2 finishes. It's 3rd off a layoff. It's, if that speed develops and the 6 does not get loose and clear, I think this is going to be worth a shot. The 3 horse is another closer in the race, but it's closed in sprints, not so much in routes. I had to eliminate, and this is where, computer program can't be perfect. That number is theoretically correct, the 168.2, but it's got an asterisk, as most things in 2020 have, and that it made a determination that it did not have enough data on 5.5 furlong races on the turf of fairgrounds to be confident in the number. And since it looked out of line with this colt's other numbers, I just eliminated it. And it took it from being on top. It's still in the arc. I would still use it in exotics if it's a long price. But I'm not looking this at a top horse. So I will look for about 12 to 1. I'd like higher, of course, but 12 to 1 where I'd start getting interested in betting the 8. May use the 3 in exotics. And again, this is dependent on that speed duel and that pressure developing. So that's the analysis of the Kentucky Derby and 1 undercard race. Again, nothing I can do about the public getting a horse correct. I mean, a race, they're betting it properly, correctly. Even though I've given all the other colts in the race every benefit of the doubt. Look for, the best races they've had in their selected form cycle. I'm stretching a little bit with Sole Volante. I think they have the right 4, the 4 outside colts, the 17, 18, 16, and 15. I think the New York Traffic may be a little bit of a quote-unquote hot horse, a wise guy horse, if you will. So not a prime bet for me. I'll play around with exotics with the 12. Maybe use some of those other deep closers on very tiny bets, the 8, the 13, and so forth. Throw the 16 in there, of course, having the 12 in there. But again, not a serious bet. Now, if they let Authentic go off because he's not so favored and he goes off at 15 or 20 to 1, I'm dreaming, right? Not going to happen. But I take a small bet on that. I have to get a very long price on Sole Volante in the 25-1, even have a secondary bet on it. I may take it back. If it's a recreational bet, I'll bet him at 20-1. But if I were considering a serious bet, I'd look for a much longer price. Again, I would like to tell you, yeah, this is a long shot I feel great about, but it's not. 'Tis the Law is the 800-pound gorilla in the race. They've got the other logical horses that ValueCapper also likes. And so it's going to be an interesting race to watch. Again, money moves. Don't know how that colt's going to affect the pace scenario. So I find it fascinating, but I also find it not a race in which there may be a good value opportunity. Well, that's it for this year's Kentucky Derby Value Capping Rant. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, for spending this time with me, for allowing me to share my thoughts about value capping with you. I can't say thank you enough. And to those who have ValueCapper, those on the Wizards Forum, those of you supporting the work, thank you for the way you support the work and you support each other. Best of luck at the races. I hope this finds you well, and I hope you will wait for your price and let the bet make you. I'll see you soon.